Welcome back. The next thing I want to just introduce as a long-term trend. Remember, these things that are happening over a period of time, and they're going to happen no matter what happens in a short period of time. So these are the mega trends that are going to continue to exist for a long period of time. And that's the social and economic impact of climate change. And again, the emphasis, I think sometimes we don't always look at what that economic impact would be, but of climate change, not addressing what the cause is other than changing climate, whether it is a natural phenomena or it's a man-made or impacted by what mankind does. Rising sea levels, there's a cost to that. Loss of the capacity to work due to heat. We'll take a look at that on the second slide that I'll show here. And I'm actually attaching an incredibly good article from McKinsey on what that is. I think it might be worthwhile just to breeze through it. More wars to gain access to limited resources. Lack of fresh water. A disease spread due to higher temperatures. Extreme meteorological phenomena will cause widespread poverty. Again, the next slide looks at that a little bit. Prices of basic foodstuffs and consumer goods will rise. We've seen that already through this pandemic that we're dealing with. Shrinking productivity of harvests, and relocations of whole towns. So we have, these are the impacts, okay? We're not debating why, but this is the impact of climate change. And I want you to really, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but I will tell you, if you're listening carefully, there will be a question on the first quiz on this. But this gives you the 5 systems that will be impacted by physical climate change. Livability and workability, food system, physical assets, infrastructure, natural capital. Let's just take a look here at food, because we all eat food, okay? And when you look at it, that the 60% of the global food supply is produced in only 5 regions of the world, okay? And that if you have a drought, look at the increase. Huge, okay? And the impact of livability in India, Florida sea levels rising. Take a look what the impact would be. But what can be done is protecting people and assets, building resilience. We're going to hear a lot about resilience over the next few months, few years as a result of this pandemic. Reduce exposure, insure, and finance. So I've put that out there. Take a look at what that is. It's some pretty heavy reading, but I think there's a lot of graphs like this. You can see the damage from, for example, from a storm surge, what the impact would be in billions and millions, flooding, needing to relocate. So this changing climate is going to impact social economic systems. We're dealing with global political change right now. Growing size and role of the developing countries, we looked at that. Expanding leadership role of China, reorder of global leadership. We're seeing tremendous populist or nationalist or mercantilism swinging right and left throughout the United States, Mexico, Brazil, UK, Italy. We have all of that, but we also have the development of new trading partnerships. We still have the Middle East, a Sunni versus Shiite situation. We still have terrorism. Now we probably would include bioterrorism in that. Climate change, what's the role of fossil fuels? In April, in the United States, for the first time, more electricity was produced with renewables than coal. Think about that for a second. More electricity in April was generated through renewables than through coal. Big change. Heightened risk of war, internally and externally. An increase in violence. Political instability around the world, including the U.S. A couple things to look at with this global role of China. China and Russia are now partners, and they have a $55 billion pipeline to prove it. Okay? And if we see this, this is in 19, is that Russia is now able to, has a pipeline, okay, that is going to be able to deliver oil and gas to China through a pipeline. That means China doesn't need to buy it from the current providers, including the liquid natural gas that the U.S. signs. China, this goes back, but it's still a huge thing. China is building infrastructure. They call it the Belt and Road Project. And when you see this, they're building ports, pipelines, railroads existing. They're connecting Africa, connecting Europe, connecting Asia. Where is the growth going to be? Go back to part one. The growth is going to be in those areas. So if the infrastructure is built as the population grows and increases its wealth, who is going to have the infrastructure to be able to do that? China. Okay? If we looked at what the U.S. is doing, we won't find any of these. So if the U.S. wants to grow, and we know that's where the people are going to be living, the Chinese have it nailed. We've gotten into hubs and spokes. The nature of trading has just gone all over the place. You're really looking at the trading partnerships that exist. There's also pressure on democracy. We can see freedom is going down. The next trend, number of Americans aged 65 and older will more than double by 2060. So take a look at this from 1960 to 2060. Down here, take a look at what's happening with these different cohorts. So in 1960, 9% of the population was over 65. Now you're probably at about 20%. It's going to go up to 24%. Number of children under 18 is lower, significantly lower. The implications of that are huge because these are the folks that will be coming into the labor market, just as all of these people have been in the labor market for some time. If you're living longer, you got higher medical costs, staying in workforce longer, second and third careers, part-time workers. That changes how firms use their human resources capital. Different lifestyles and buying habits as people age. Decline in workforce in U.S. and developed countries. So if you're going to need workers and we don't have enough workers coming in, we still have the demand for those between 65 and 84. So where are those products and services going to come from? When we look at this, and I think it's fascinating to see this, if you haven't figured this out, I like charts and graphs. But the increase in number of people between 20 and 64 has been declining while those 65 and older are up. Up until just about 2010, we have seen the opposite, where age 20 to 64 have been growing, not as much as the under, but here's where it made its turn, which is consistent with when early baby boomers were born, when they're retiring, and how they're aging. That has an impact. Let me just give you one impact that's a little bit different, is in the housing supply is that new home sales volume, here's what it was in 18, and here when we go out, there's going to be more homes available because they're being vacated by seniors. Okay? So this is price of homes. Will it go down? Do young people want to live in the same places? Do they need as big a home? Here's some age statistics, and the world, you can see, median age is 30. 9% of the population is older. Take a look at the U.S. 38%. 38 is the average age. 16%. Japan, 28. We're moving in that direction. Even China has an older age. The growth is in all of these countries here. So think about this, all within this changing dynamic. Unless you, as a student, plan on having 3 to 5 kids by the time you're 30, this isn't going to change. We're also seeing this tremendous shift in ethnicity here in the U.S. From primarily a white non-Hispanic to incredibly fast-growing Asian and Hispanic population. There's a lot of these drivers of change: demographic, reshaped, and disruptive innovation. And I think this is one of the biggest things that is happening and will be the impact of COVID-19. Disruptors literally uproot and change how we think, behave, do business, learn, and go about our day-to-day lives. A disruption displaces an existing market, industry, technology, process, production, product, service, and produces something new, more efficient, and worthwhile. It is at once destructive and creative. The smartphone and Amazon are the best examples. And you can click on these links to learn more about COVID-19 as a disruptor. This will force reinvention. That means opportunities for you. And as we will see, we're going to spend a lot of time this semester seeing what areas we can see these need for reinvention for a disruptor. How can you benefit from it? What I'd like to do now is walk you through a presentation on 5G. This was actually done by Dan Borg and Jake Puccio. And take a look and catch you on part 3. Is in Finance 315, each of the students work together in a team with someone else to share what's going on in the world based on Wall Street Journal articles. How do we tie in this innovation? And Dan Borg and Jake Puccio did something called 5G. So I just want to walk it through because we don't all know. Some of you may have seen this presentation. But 5G stands for Fifth Generation Cellular Wireless. The standards for this were set at the end of 2017. Verizon and AT&T both launched preliminary 5G services in late 2018. It's not broadly available right now. There's still a lot of uncertainty about it. So to start out, what is 5G? Fifth generation 5G facts. It's 1,000 times more capacity than 4G, 100 times faster than 4G. By 2021, infrastructure will be in place to reach about 100 million Americans out of 300. At the same time, the Chinese will have the entire country covered by that point. There's almost 58,000 patents filed in 2018 around 5G. So what we can see here is it has a lot of different things that go into it. Some of it will affect broadband, our mobility. It's high data rate, high capacity, reliability, security, low latency, long battery life, massive number of devices. So with this 5G, it's not as much what it's going to do for our cell phone because 1G was, it's not so much what's going to hit our smartphones. Take a look for factories. The response time for more efficient work on the latency. Combination of wireless charging and connectivity will allow mobile robots to remain on the job at all times. It'll increase the output of factories while lowering variable costs. Increase productivity. For doctors in medicine, it connects patients at home with doctors to streamline service, improve care for patients that are hard to move. Allow doctors to perform surgery from around the world on patients using surgery machines. So a surgeon in Rochester could operate in someone in South Africa. It's going to allow EMTs and paramedics to connect hospitals, to start treatment faster, and to provide with the guidance they need, the speed and capacity. For cars, this is going to be a huge deal. It's more reliable. And essentially, think about this, it's going to provide a more complete experience, but driverless cars are the big thing with this. And with this additional speed and capacity, it will be able to get more information about traffic hazards faster. So if you're driving one of these you're not driving, you're sitting in a self-driving car, it is going to be able to respond to an obstacle or a situation much, much faster than 4G, thus making it more profitable. When we keep going, it's going to be used in sports. We've already seen some of that. South Korea at the Winter Olympics. It's a host of cameras and sensors throughout the venue. So you can literally run with the sports person. They experimented in the 2019 All-Star Game. You can get statistics on your phone. So there's a lot of use for it. This will disrupt process. For say surveillance. Surveillance cameras on city streets are going to be able to automatically identify criminals with facial recognition. That's a little bit scary. They can track individual behavior, personalized coupons, and stores can be set up anywhere without cashiers like the Amazon Go method, just grab and go. So that is a big piece of that. And just take a brief look at this Amazon Go.